We'll get started. I'm going to do a very brief little introduction about myself, of a prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Ralph, who will talk a bit about the process, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. I did bring my laptop, thought about possibly putting up some slides, but I think the process is fairly straightforward, so I hope that in talking it through it makes sense, and that it will save a little time so that you can get on with your day. As I mentioned, I'm with the New England Synod now. I was ordained Lutheran, born on a farm in northern Minnesota. My first call was at a church out in Montana. My wife brought us east for her studies, and we've stayed out here ever since. In the process of all of that, my metaphor for life is stumbling. We stumble into things. So I stumbled into the Episcopal Church in Stamford, where my wife was working. And the church there asked me to help out for a little time, and eventually asked me to be the rector. We have a call to common mission with the Episcopal Church. The bishop in Connecticut at the time said, you can do everything else. You can be an assistant, an interim, a chaplain, a priest in charge, but you got to be Episcopal to be the rector. So I was received into the Episcopal Church 10 years ago, and I was at that church for 20-some years, and then stumbled into this most recent call with the New England Synod, starting last year, just at the end of November. So I'm relatively new. The one thing I love is getting into parishes, meeting clergy, meeting congregants. It really is a wonderful group of people, faithful. The thing I also enjoy about this process in terms of transition is holding up or raising up the reality of the priesthood of all believers. That is, by virtue of our baptism, we all are ordained, right, to various ministries. Word and sacrament ministers, obviously to a specific ministry in the community, but every single person has a ministry or ministries that they're a part of. And I hope that as you go through this process, you think about that reality, how you as individuals and you as a collective share the ministries here at Holy Trinity. And I have to say that in my acquaintances via Zoom with folks, leadership, been very impressed with the folks who are here, and I know that you're in good hands. So we will talk a bit about that process, but before we do, the Lord be with you. Let's pray. Holy and gracious God, we give you thanks for the gift of this day, the beauty of the creation that surrounds us, and the wonder of life. We give you thanks for Holy Trinity, your people who are here, your beloved, who are in ministry in Newington and beyond. We give thanks for Pastor Luther and his ministry in this place, the ministry that's been shared with the good people of Holy Trinity. Care for them and guide them in this time of transition. May their time with Pastor Luther be blessed, and may they celebrate well his retirement. Continue to awaken within them a sense of your presence, and remind them always that your Spirit is guiding them. At times we are not always sure where we are going, but we remain faithful to the knowledge that you are with us. Bless those here and those who are not. Continue to awaken us to your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'll turn it over to Ralph, and he'll describe the process a little bit, and then if there are questions, happy to answer whatever I can.
Thank you, Mark. Do I need the mic too? Probably. All right. So thank you. So My goal was to not take too much time today, but prepared to be here as long as people have questions and discussion. So I had a couple notes that I wanted to go over first, and we'll get this started. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Mark, for introducing yourself and for being here and preaching for us today. As you all know, the reason we're here is we are going through a transition. That's a euphemism for changing everything as we get a new pastor, right? The pastor is a big part of what goes on at this church or any church. And, you know, as a business person, when I'm hiring people, I like to say, well, we'll just get the job description out there, we'll house someone, and we'll move on. Let's go get going. And I need to remind myself that's not the kind of process this is, because we're not just hiring someone to do the same role that we had done before. And I was saying to anyone who thinks we're just going to get another pastor and keep going as we're going, doesn't understand how much a pastor really influences who we are and what we do, or they don't understand how unique Pastor Ziegler was. We're not going to get another one, but we're going to get someone who's right for us. So I had a couple notes here. First of all, we've met Mark. I wanted to meet the transition team who is starting this process. So if you can stand up, I see some of them are here, right? Donna, John, Tim. So it's okay. So good. So excellent comment, thank you. So I will start. My name is Ralph Case, right? I am relatively new to this church, and still meeting people here. And so I don't know people either, so that's an excellent comment. Introduce ourselves. We'll pass the mic around and get the, oh, yeah.
Hello, my name is John Kramer. I am also new to this church, been here for about a year, and excited to be part of the process to help guide it forward.
Tim Altoff, been around a really, really long time. And it's good to be part of this process. We've enjoyed interacting with Mark, and I think we've learned a lot, and hopefully we'll get a whole lot of input from you guys as this moves forward.
Good morning. My name is Donna Hewitt. I've also been here many, many years. Probably not as long as you, Tim, but pretty close. I'm also very excited to be on this team. I think we really gel together. We work well together, and we're excited that all of you can be part of that and participate, help us figure out what that future is going to look like.
Thank you. So there's some names, but remember those people, because as we go through this process over the next few, maybe more than a few months, if you have questions, comments, reach out to any one of us. We're here for all of us. Linda.
I was just going to add, there's two other additional members that couldn't be here today. Heidi Morrison is on council and the council representative of the transition team, and also Joe Whiting is part of the transition team as well.
Thank you. So there's a couple parts of this process that we'll be following through, and kind of explain what the order is and how long they're going to take and when are we going to be done, right? So first of all, there's a saying goodbye, right? Part of the transition is we will be recognizing Pastor Luther and what he's accomplished and say goodbye. We don't have the details for that yet. We do know his last date is in November, and so we are still working on getting organized and thinking about what is an appropriate way to send him off into his retirement. And if you have ideas, thoughts, want to participate in that, again, reach out to one of us on the team or one of the council members as we organize that. And we'll get more details out to you as we develop that. The next part, which we're starting now, is the second phase, is the reflection, discernment, and assessment. Who are we? And what are our needs and wants, and how can we contribute to the growth and the future of this church together? And there's a couple things we're doing with that. One is we're going to send out a survey to everyone, starting today. Everyone loves surveys, right? It's an online form. You can go in and check the boxes and rate what's important to you. And we'll be getting that link out to everyone via email this week, and we'll have links and QR codes in the bulletins in the next coming weeks. That'll go on for 3 weeks, collecting the data, and then for some time after that, a couple weeks, we'll be compiling it, assessing it, and we will report back to the whole congregation about what we've learned from that. Surveys don't really capture everything, though. I love data, I like to look at it, but there's also some of our story of who we are, what is important to us, and the discussion is also important. So we've scheduled a time, you also saw in your bulletins, in October, we're going to get together after church for a potluck and have discussion groups about the same kinds of things. What do we really value about this place, about this community, and what do we want to preserve? What do we want to change going forward? I think that there's the quantitative part and the qualitative part, and we want to collect all of that from this congregation. That all goes into a document that's known as a Ministry Site Profile, MSP. You may hear that. That's a document of a standard form that will describe who we are, and we can give to prospective pastors. It's kind of like a job description, right? They will look at that as they're looking at new churches that they might want to come into. But it describes who we are, what we've learned from ourselves, where we're located, right? All those kinds of things that are important for a pastor to know. And we'll be sharing that with the Synod as they help us find pastors who might be interested here. And then there's an interview process. We'll be forming a call committee, which will get together and using what we've learned from the assessment, using the ministry site profile, and using pastors who are brought to us through the Synod to interview and find who's got the right fit. Once the call committee selects or gets to a point where we think we've got a good pastor, we'll bring that name into the council. The council will be involved in discussing compensation and start dates and things like that. And if we get to all that agreement, we'll then bring that candidate into the congregation, and we'll have a congregation-wide meeting and vote, hopefully approve at that time. But everyone's involved in several different steps in this process. And then welcoming is the final step as we welcome the new full-time pastor into this. So that's kind of an overview of the process. Glad to go into more details on any of those, but at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions and discussion. And, Mark, from his perspective, is glad to answer. He's done this many times. And we have other, church leaders here who are also glad to answer how this pertains to us. So, questions?
Okay. Last time around, we did this, and we all did it online. Well, most of us did it online. There are some folks who were not and had to have a manual survey to fill out. Are we still going to do that, or is it simply online?
Yes. We want to hear from everyone. Online is good for most people. If it's not, we will have other options available. Either sit with someone and help go through the online, print it out, fill it out. We want to get everyone involved. Good question, thank you. And yes, you made another comment that I was thinking about is, I wasn't here, but we've done this recently. Do we really have to do it again? and yes, we do, because we have changed a lot over the last 4 years. We have a lot of new faces here, and it's a different community than it was, and the world is different, right? So it's really useful to do it again at this point. Thank you for the question.
And just to add in, that thing you'll fill out is called the church assessment tool, and a congregational assessment tool. And it's done by Holy Cow Consulting. When we went through their training, there's a Methodist minister in Iowa that uses it. And if you know anything about the Methodist system, they rotate clergy at least every 5 years. And so they've relied on this tool in part because it does for them, it's been very helpful in terms of thinking about, again, the congregation's profile, but there are questions in there about your understanding of theology, in things like if there's a very conservative clergy person in terms of the way that he or she reads the Bible, and you're a more progressive or liberal congregation in terms of the way that you think about theology and read the Bible, that's a very easy thing for us to see. Well, who do we want you to interview? So things like that will come up in that congregational assessment. And as Ralph mentioned, then that information, along with what you are doing as a congregation in that potluck and elsewhere, will bring that all together for the ministry site profile, which will be very helpful to us and also to prospective clergy.
When can we expect an interim pastor to come on board? When can we expect an interim pastor to come on board?
We're working on that right now. I would hope that we can have somebody here, just after Pastor Luther leaves, so that there's, you've got coverage throughout. And again, I feel pretty confident that we can do that. So that's what we're working on. You should also know that you're a little further ahead than other congregations. Every transition is different. Sometimes clergy leave because they're going somewhere else, and congregations have a very short window before they jump into that transition process. Because of Pastor Ziegler's retirement, you know when he's leaving, and doing the CAT, or the Congregational Assessment Tool, beginning those conversations that will help you to develop the ministry site profile, and hopefully, possibly having that call committee set December or January. You've done a number of things prior to Pastor Ziegler's departure. So, as far as the timeline goes, you're in a good place. And that said, only God knows, what that nice match will be. And hopefully that we find someone sooner than later. But I do think that that's also something you're thinking about, is like, not just who's the leader, but who's the person who meshes well with who we are as a congregation. And again, the ministries that you own, right? You don't need someone to come in and be your finance person. You've got people that do that. So you're looking for, specific gifts to enrich the community and then match the gifts that you have. Here and then over there next.
I'm a little concerned because it makes me very uncomfortable to during Advent and Christmas not to know who we're going to have or what was going to go on. Is there a chance we could have somebody for the whole season, just to keep us on level track, because my feeling last year was bumpy.
I think that we're working on exactly that. Hopefully that you have that coverage. That's our desire.
This is addressed to Pastor Lingle. It might be a step down from your position with the bishop, but are you allowed to nominate yourself? Not meant to be in humor. That was meant to be serious.
No, I can't. Actually, I can't.
I was wondering if it's possible to have a past transition pastor to be our transition person.
That would be possible. If you've got names, talk to Erlinda or Ralph. We're looking at all options.
I was just wondering if you could tell us approximately how many of the churches in the New England Synod are in the call process or getting close to being in the call process?
I would say there are just ballpark probably 20 from Connecticut all the way up to Maine. My catchment in Connecticut and Western Massachusetts, there are about 5 that are open, actively open right now, and another couple that are going to be coming online. When I think about Rhode Island, Massachusetts, probably a few more. So maybe not fully 20, but upper teens. There's also, as I'm sure you're aware, the mainline churches have been in decline, and so there are churches that are in the midst of their process are thinking about and discerning what are our options, right? They may not be able to afford a full-time person, so are they calling a part-time minister? Are they looking at sharing a minister with another congregation? Are they looking at the possibility of some type of merger, right? This could be Lutheran churches with Lutheran churches, but there are also examples in the Synod, Lutheran churches with Episcopal churches, congregational churches and Lutheran churches. So, I think that you're in a place of looking to, call that someone like Pastor Luther, but it's also helpful to look around in this time as well and think about what other ways might we do ministry. One of the words we use is discernment, right? We're trying to discern what it is that God is calling us to. And sometimes it may be something similar to what we've had, but maybe there are some things that are emerging that would actually enhance or further God's ministry in the world, right? So there is, in my mind, there's no right or wrong answer here. There's discernment.
The pastors that you're looking for, how many years should they have as worked as a pastor already, or can we go into the schools and see if there is someone there? Because it's a long waiting list, and I thought this might be a good way.
Mm-hmm. There are, the way that the system is working, we have a mobility, person who's in charge of mobility. Her name is Susan Gata, and she is a minister in Shepherd of the Valley in, I forget what community in Massachusetts, but there are clergy who are interested in New England Synod, and so they'll send her their rostered minister profile, and there's a folder that we have of all of those individuals, and we'll be looking at those, and particularly when we get your ministry site profile, to see if there are some natural matches. Those may be people who are right out of seminary, and they may be people who have been in ministry for 30 years, and anything in between. Again, it's really trying to think about what is a good match. And my experience has been that's all over the map. When I was in Stamford for the last 20 years, there was a former bishop who was the Lutheran minister in town, and he and I worked together very closely. His retirement was similar to Pastor Luther's, and so they had already done work before he left. But it took them over a year plus to get their newly called person. At the same time, there's another church that went through, they're at an interim, and they ended up calling that individual. So there are any number of ways that this works out, and again, it's trying to find what that fit is. And I think that when I think about the rostered minister profile and those who are on the mobility form, there are a number of individuals who are interested in New England. So I'm hopeful that we could find sooner than later a really good match for you.
I haven't asked this of you, so I don't want to put you on the spot yet. With our reciprocity with Episcopalians, UCC, is there a moment in terms of the candidate process that you share information denominationally, like to the Episcopal bishop saying, hey, we got somebody for here, but we don't have somebody here? And if and when, how does that happen?
It happens mostly organically, but I'm in conversation with the bishop and his staff in Connecticut, and also some of you might be familiar with Stephen Wilco, who is, I'm doing his job, and he's now at Western Mass in the Episcopal Church. So we talk with each other, and I'm certainly open to saying, if you've got people that are in transition, clergy who are looking for a site, I'm happy to raise that with them. So that's really how it would just happen, is like I'll be on a call with Stephen and say, do you know of anybody? And I should say, too, we're trying to work more closely with the diocese so that a lot of that kind of work happens more often. There are clergy from the Lutheran Church who are supplying in the Episcopal Church. Episcopal priests are supplying in the Lutheran Church. I think the more that we do together, those connections just become much more easy to make, and hopefully, again, there are good matches there. Anything else?
I was in a church, and we had a little gap, and there were many very capable people among the congregation that could lead a Sunday, it worked out very well, and we had online stuff, and so that's just a suggestion to have in the back of our heads.
So I think what was said is that you'd had the experience of lay people taking over for worship at various points in a previous iteration, and that worked out well, and that might be something to think about. In the New England Synod, we're actually working on developing a licensed lay ministry group that already exists, but we're working on formalizing that so that there's people know what the process is, and there's some type of accountability and all of that. But there are lay people who are leading worship in various communities in the Synod. One of the things that we were talking about in thinking about the transition, I know that you have an Advent, I think, midweek event service. And my suggestion was, why not have the lay people lead that? If there isn't an interim there at the time, I think that that's a wonderful opportunity for people in the parish who might have an interest in something like that. They like to lead prayer or would be open to that. Those are little ways to, again, expand your understanding of the ministry that you share. Again, there's a very specific word and sacrament that the minister does, but, and obviously with licensed lay ministers, we're saying there are other people out there that can do this. And I, for one, am happy to say that I know the parish that I was a part of, there were wonderful gifts in that community for all sorts of leadership, and worship and prayer leadership was one of those things.
Along those lines, does this area, or do you also work with AIMS, Associates in Ministry? I could see a role for them with Bible study and helping on Sundays, and just lots of possibilities. So if we could incorporate Ames in our interim process, and if we decide that we only get a part-time pastor, and AIM would be, I would think, very helpful.
Yep.
So can you tell us about Ames?
So Ames are associates in ministry, and it's kind of the alphabet soup of all of the designations that we have in ministry, but we have ordained clergy, we have deacons, we have associates in ministry. As I mentioned, we have licensed lay ministers. So there are a number of people who are engaged in ministry with various titles, and really it's about, I think, finding again what would work well with you, and you could put together, again, it could be a full-time person and it's just one person. It could be a shared ministry. I mean, again, there are a number of ways that things can be done. And I think it really then is, and that's part of what you're discerning as you go through this process about what is it that you need, what would be helpful for your community, what's going to be the ideal ministry setting, and, we'll shoot for that. And if that's not possible for whatever reason, are there other ways that we can do this? So flexibility is the operative word, right? Any other questions? So, Ralph, you want no other questions. I was going to just say, and it kind of goes to the question I think that was back here. I don't think she's here anymore, but I was talking with Erlinda a while ago, and some of you might be familiar with a fellow named Henry Nouwen. He's a wonderful spiritual writer, died a few years ago. He has this wonderful image in one of his books, the opening of a book about prayer, but I think it's very apt for where you're at. And his image is of a woman who is admitted to the psychiatric wing of a hospital, and as a part of that process, they need to take everything from her. The last thing she has is a little coin, and she's holding on to it with all of her might so that the orderlies have to pry her hand open to take it. And Nouwen uses that image as a reflection on, for prayer, how often we cling to things, and that what prayer is an opening up, right? Letting go of things. And I think that image is also helpful for all of us, wherever we are at any point in time, but also for you in this transition, because there are going to be moments where you're going to want to hold on to whatever it is that you got. And maybe what God is reminding you to do in that moment is to open up and try to let go. It's not easy. That's a part of our spiritual practice. But as human beings, that's such a default for us, is to, when things are uncertain, when we don't know exactly what's going to happen, when we're not always in control, we kind of hold on to things, right? And my prayer for you is that you as individuals and you collectively can open up to this process and discover more about you individually, but you as a collective, how God is present here, what God is calling you to, and the celebration, again, of Pastor Luther's ministry with you and the hope of that ongoing ministry with someone else. So thank you for the time. If you have any questions, I am available. Erlinda and I talk, Ralph and I talk, so if you have anything that I can answer, I'm happy to pick up the phone, go on a Zoom, whatever. I'll certainly be continuing with the process, and know that you're in our prayers as well for a wonderful celebration with Pastor Luther and the ongoing process and transition. So, thank you. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and blessings.
thank you for your time and for participating in this, and we look forward to you continuing to participate in this transition process as we go through it.